Imagine a toll booth on the world's most important road, but the only currency they accept is Chinese yuan. That's exactly what's happening right now at the Strait of Hormuz. And if you fill up your car with gas, heat your home, or have any savings tied to energy markets, this affects you directly. So let's walk through it together, step by step, the way it actually works. Start with the map, because geography is the weapon here. About 20% of all the world's oil passes through a single waterway called the Strait of Hormuz, a stretch of water between Iran and Oman that's barely 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, smaller than the distance between many neighboring towns. And yet, every single day, dozens of massive oil tankers have to squeeze through that gap to deliver energy to Asia, Europe, and the rest of the world. Iran controls one coastline of that strait, and recently, through its National Security Committee, Iran has legally authorized the collection of transit fees from ships passing through. Think of it like a landlord who suddenly decides to charge rent on a road that everyone assumed was always free. Except this landlord has gunboats. But here's what makes it entirely different from any toll road you've ever seen. Iran is not accepting US dollars. They are demanding payment in Chinese yuan, or in crypto stablecoins. And if your ship is flying the flag of a country Iran considers hostile, like the United States or Israel, you don't just pay more, you may be denied passage entirely. So ask yourself, what happens to global oil prices when the world's most critical shipping lane becomes a political checkpoint? Let's talk numbers, because this needs to feel real. The fee is roughly $1 per barrel of oil. A standard supertanker, what the industry calls a VLCC, a very large crude carrier, holds about 2 million barrels. That means the ship's owner receives a bill for $2 million just to pass through. And that cost doesn't disappear. It moves down the chain, to the oil company, to the refinery, to the gas station, and ultimately lands on you every time energy prices tick upward. Economists would call this a geopolitical tax. You are paying it, even if you never once hear the word Hormuz on the evening news. It is invisible to most people, but it is absolutely real. Now here's the part that goes beyond money and into something far more unsettling. To receive permission to pass through the strait, ships must now contact an intermediary from Iran's Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, and hand over their complete cargo records, their destination, and their full route. In return, they receive a passcode. Think carefully about what that means. Iran now holds a real-time database of who is shipping what oil, from where, to where, and in what quantity. Every ship that complies is handing Tehran a live map of the world's energy supply chain. That is not just a toll booth. That is a strategic intelligence operation dressed up as a fee collection. To secure a green light for passage, vessels are now required to register through a Chinese-provided digital authentication protocol. Think of it as a mandatory digital passport for the high seas. While it's framed as a safety measure, it functions as a strategic vacuum, sucking up real-time data on global cargo, destinations, and logistics. The moment a captain logs into this system, the vessel effectively enters a digital right-of-way managed by Beijing, operating on a ledger that Western maritime authorities can neither verify nor control. Now zoom out, because this is where it connects to your retirement, your savings, and the next 20 years of your life. For decades, the world has operated on what's called the Petrodollar system. The arrangement is simple but enormously powerful. Oil is priced and paid for in US dollars. That single fact is why the dollar has been the world's dominant reserve currency since World War II. Needing dollars means the United States has extraordinary financial leverage over the rest of the world, leverage that has never required a single bullet to enforce. What Iran is doing at Hormuz is a direct assault on that system. What makes this shift dangerous isn't just that the transactions are happening, it's that they are happening outside the reach of the US Treasury. By routing payments through China's CIPS, cross-border interbank payment system, and encrypted digital wallets, Tehran and Beijing have effectively built a financial black box. Washington can still track the physical movement of tankers via satellite, but they no longer possess the kill switch to freeze the funds. For the first time in 80 years, the US can see the trade, but it cannot stop the money. Here's a simple comparison to make it stick. For 80 years, every major oil transaction in the world had to pass through what you might picture as one specific American clearinghouse, SWIFT. That clearinghouse had enormous power.
It could freeze accounts, block deals, and cut countries off from global trade entirely. That is the engine behind US sanctions. Now imagine someone builds a competing clearinghouse in Beijing that processes the same transactions but shares nothing with Washington. That is precisely what is happening. Not with real estate paperwork, but with oil. So where does China actually stand in all of this? China is the single biggest winner in this scenario, and they haven't fired a shot or moved a warship. Beijing doesn't need to send a fleet to Hormuz. They simply need Iran to keep that toll booth running, in yuan, and the internationalization of the Chinese currency accelerates faster than any trade agreement or diplomatic summit could ever achieve. But, and this is a crucial nuance, China is also genuinely nervous. Rising oil prices hurt China's own economy because China is the world's largest oil importer. So Beijing is playing an extremely careful game. Benefit from the yuan's growing global role, but don't let the situation spiral into open war that sends oil prices to $200 a barrel and shuts down Chinese factories. China doesn't need to own the Strait of Hormuz. They just need Iran to make it the one place on Earth where the US dollar is worthless. And that alone reshapes the global financial order. There's one more piece of this puzzle that almost nobody is talking about, and it's the insurance industry. The entire global shipping system depends on insurance, and that insurance is written primarily by firms based in London. When Iran unilaterally rewrites the rules of passage, charging its own fees, threatening ships, demanding new software, Western insurers face an impossible situation. They cannot legally insure vessels operating under terms set by a sanctioned government, running a system that bypasses every rule they were built around. So who fills that vacuum? Russian and Chinese insurance companies step in. And the moment that happens, yet another layer of Western financial infrastructure quietly peels away from global trade. Not through war, not through legislation, but through the simple logic of who's willing to underwrite the risk. Here's the historical image that will help you remember all of this. In medieval Europe, powerful lords built castles at river crossings and mountain passes and charged travelers a toll. If you paid in their currency, you were recognized as a subject of their system, under their protection, with rights to trade and travel. If you refused, you were an outsider, denied passage, or left vulnerable to attack. The global shipping companies are the merchants, and the currency of loyalty is the yuan. The genius of it, or the danger, depending on which side of this you sit on, is that it requires no invasion, no missile strike, no declaration of war, just geography, a legal decree, and a payment terminal. And here's what Wall Street is genuinely losing sleep over. Global financial markets run on algorithms, massive supercomputers that price oil, currencies, and freight rates in milliseconds, all calibrated to a dollar-denominated world. When a physical choke point like Hormuz suddenly operates in yuan, those algorithms have to be reprogrammed from scratch. Every model Wall Street has refined over decades assumes oil flows through SWIFT in dollars. That assumption is now cracking in real time. This is genuinely unprecedented in modern history. It is the first time that a geographic barrier, a narrow strip of open water, has forced the reprogramming of global financial logic. Not a new law passed by Congress, not an international treaty, a strait. Now I want to ask you something, and I'd like you to actually sit with this question. If the petrodollar system weakens, not collapses overnight, but slowly erodes over the next 10 to 20 years, what does that mean for US interest rates, for your savings account, for the price of imported goods at your local store? The honest answer is this. A weaker dollar does not mean America collapses, but it does mean that Americans, and everyone whose savings are tied to dollar-denominated assets, will pay more for goods, more for energy, and more to service debt. The era in which the United States could borrow cheaply because the entire world needed dollars to buy oil, that era is shortening. And the people who will feel it first and most sharply are not Wall Street traders. They are ordinary people on fixed incomes, with pensions, with mortgages, trying to plan a retirement in a world that is quietly being rewired beneath their feet. And this is the question I genuinely want to hear your thoughts on. Is Iran acting alone here? Or is this being quietly coordinated by Beijing, with Tehran serving as the executor? Because if China is orchestrating this through Iran as a strategic proxy, then what we are watching is not a regional dispute over a shipping lane. It is the opening move of a decades-long restructuring of global financial power, the first hard border between two competing financial worlds, with SWIFT on one side and CIPS on the other, and the Strait of Hormuz as the checkpoint between them. Would the US ever allow the petrodollar to decline? Absolutely not. History and hard power are delivering a clear message that cannot be ignored. Washington has proven, beyond any doubt, that American strength will not tolerate any threat to its core national interests. Iran may have tried to play the role of digital feudal lord at the Strait of Hormuz, demanding payment in yuan, collecting intelligence, and rerouting oil money through CIPS. China may have quietly positioned itself to benefit from every tanker that pays in renminbi. But when the world's most critical energy chokepoint is weaponized against the petrodollar, the United States does not merely respond, it acts decisively. From the precision strikes in February that eliminated Iran's supreme leader to President Trump's unambiguous two-week ultimatum demanding the strait be fully reopened, Washington has sent an unmistakable signal. No one will be allowed to turn the Strait of Hormuz into a toll booth that rewrites global financial order. The Iran-China connection is being shattered, piece by piece. Despite Tehran's geographic leverage and Beijing's financial and technological backing, the combined military, intelligence, and strategic superiority of the United States and Israel remains overwhelming. Every challenge from Iran comes at a higher and higher cost. And China, no matter how cleverly it avoids direct confrontation, understands one hard truth. It cannot afford a full-scale war that would devastate its own oil-dependent economy. The likely outcome? Iran will be forced into concessions. The strait will reopen, at least partially. The Yuan Toll Booth may survive as a short-term scar, but it will not become the new normal. The petrodollar system will be tested, yet it is still far from collapse. And the rules-based order that America defends, where oil flows freely and payments revolve around the dollar, will be forcefully reasserted. This is not the story of a declining empire. This is the story of a superpower that remains willing to use every tool, from precision strikes to uncompromising diplomacy, to remind the world, touch America's vital interests, and you will pay the price. One final question for you. Do you believe the United States will maintain this dominant position for the next decade? Or are the challenges from the Iran-China axis only the beginning of a truly multipolar world? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our updates as this critical 2-week ceasefire unfolds. Thank you for watching. In a chaotic world, understanding who truly holds the levers of power is the best way to protect your own future.
Keep in mind, this isn't a conflict Donald Trump started. He inherited decades of sanctions from his predecessors. Yet the threat to American core values and the economy is more direct right now than ever before.